In a small corner of the universe, on a forgotten planet called Earth, there was a human girl who was destined to change everything. Her name was Aurora Quinn, a seemingly ordinary girl from a small town in the heart of the United States. She had grown up with a passion for science, a fascination with the stars, and an insatiable curiosity about the universe. However, she had no idea that one day, she would be the one to rewrite the very rules of reality itself. Aurora's life was as unremarkable as any other teenager's, filled with school, friends, and dreams of something greater. She excelled in her studies, but her talents went unnoticed in a world that often looked the other way when it came to Earth's brightest minds. Still, she didn't mind. She found comfort in the quiet, in the ordinary. That was, until the day that everything changed. It all started on the night of the meteor shower. Aurora had been waiting for months for this event. She had read every book, studied every article, and built her own telescope in preparation for the night when the stars would fall from the sky. But what she witnessed that night wasn't a simple meteor shower. It was something far beyond anything her science books could have ever predicted. As the meteors streaked across the sky, one of them seemed to grow brighter and faster, pulling away from the others. Aurora's heart raced as she realized it was heading directly toward her. For a moment, she thought she might be dreaming. Then, with a deafening roar, the object crashed just beyond the hill at the edge of her family's property. She ran toward it, fear and excitement mixing in her chest. When she reached the crash site, she found something that defied all logic. A small, glowing crystal, pulsing with an eerie light, lay in the center of a crater. It hummed, vibrating in the ground beneath her feet. She couldn't explain why, but something about it called to her, pulling her closer. She knelt down, her fingers trembling as they brushed against the surface of the stone. The moment her skin made contact, a surge of energy exploded through her. The shockwave sent her flying backward, and for a moment, everything went dark. When Aurora woke, she found herself on her back in the grass, staring up at the stars. But something was different. Her mind felt sharper, clearer. Her senses seemed heightened. She could hear the hum of electricity in the wires above her, the sound of a distant car on the highway, and the rapid beating of her own heart. And most disturbingly, she could feel the energy of the crystal within her. It was alive inside of her, pulsing and syncing with her heartbeat. As the days went on, Aurora discovered that the power wasn't just a feeling, it was real. She could manipulate energy, bend it to her will. She could control the very fabric of reality, something no human should have the ability to do. She experimented, at first cautiously, but with growing confidence. She could move objects with her mind. She could communicate telepathically with others, sending thoughts and emotions like ripples across the air. She could manipulate time, slowing it or speeding it up with a mere thought. And as she practiced, her power grew. What had once been small bursts of energy turned into massive surges of force. She could control the weather, shape the land, and even alter the laws of physics in her immediate surroundings. The power of the crystal had merged with her own, becoming an extension of her very being. But with power came responsibility and danger. News of the meteor crash spread quickly, and soon, Aurora found herself under the watchful eyes of governments and organizations across the planet. At first, they were skeptical, dismissing the incident as a freak occurrence. But when they began to see the inexplicable changes in her, their curiosity turned into something darker. The first to make contact was the United Federation of Earth, a global organization that oversaw military and scientific affairs. They had been monitoring the skies for years, searching for any sign of extraterrestrial life or technology. The arrival of the meteor and the strange abilities that accompanied it did not go unnoticed. Aurora's abilities quickly attracted the attention of a group of scientists, military leaders, and secretive figures, all eager to understand the source of her power. Some sought to control it, believing it could be used to defend Earth from the unknown threats lurking beyond the stars. Others saw it as a tool for domination, a weapon that could give humanity the upper hand in the galactic arena. But it wasn't just Earth that was watching. Far beyond the reaches of the Milky Way, In the depths of space, a vast and ancient empire known as the Zareth Dominion had detected a strange anomaly. Their sensors had picked up the sudden surge of energy from Aurora's awakening, and they knew immediately what it meant. The Zareth were an advanced race of conquerors who had dominated countless worlds, and they were always on the lookout for powerful artifacts, especially ones like the crystal that had fused with Aurora. They had heard legends of a weapon so powerful that it could bend the very fabric of the universe, and they believed they had found it in the form of the human girl. They would stop at nothing to claim it for their own. And so, they began their journey toward Earth, with one singular goal: to take Aurora and the crystal, no matter the cost. The first time Aurora encountered the Zareth was a nightmare. She had been sitting in her room, trying to process everything that had happened to her, when the world outside her window suddenly darkened. The sky turned an unnatural shade of red, and she could feel a tremor in the air. The crystal, which she had been keeping hidden in a small box, pulsed violently, as though reacting to something far away. Her phone buzzed with an emergency alert. The United Federation had detected an incoming fleet massive and unlike anything Earth had ever seen before. A moment later, the door to her room exploded inward, and a figure in dark armor stepped through. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and its voice reverberated with an alien cadence. "Human girl," it said, "you are the key. Surrender yourself, and we will spare your world." Aurora's heart raced, and instinctively, she reached for the crystal hidden in her desk. The moment her fingers brushed against it, a surge of energy exploded outward, knocking the figure back. It stumbled, but quickly regained its footing. "We are the Zareth," the figure said, its voice filled with an eerie calm. "And we do not give up what is ours." Aurora stood her ground. "I don't know what you are, or why you're here," she said, her voice shaky but firm. "But I won't let you take me." With a wave of her hand, the energy of the crystal exploded outward, forming a protective barrier around her. The Zareth soldier raised its weapon, but before it could fire, Aurora unleashed a shockwave that sent it flying across the room. The battle had begun. As the Zareth forces descended upon Earth, Aurora realized that she was no longer just a girl caught in the whirlwind of cosmic events. She was the center of it all. And if she didn't fight, everything she knew and loved would be destroyed. Her power was the key to everything. And now, it was up to her to decide how to wield it. The world had changed in the blink of an eye. The arrival of the Zareth Dominion marked the beginning of a new war, one that would shake the very foundations of human civilization. With their advanced technology and immense military might, the Zareth easily overpowered Earth's defenses. Cities fell. Governments crumbled. And humanity was thrown into chaos. But Aurora was not powerless. She had become a living weapon, a force capable of pushing back against the invaders. The crystal that had fused with her was not just a source of power, it was a weapon, capable of rewriting the laws of the universe. She had only begun to scratch the surface of what it could do. As the Zareth forces swept across the planet, Aurora took to the skies. She fought back with all her strength, but it wasn't enough. For every victory, the Zareth seemed to grow stronger, their weapons more devastating. And with every battle, Aurora felt herself slipping further from the girl she had once been. The power of the crystal was consuming her. The more she used it, the more it took from her humanity. She could feel the darkness creeping into her mind, whispering to her, urging her to embrace the full extent of her power. But Aurora refused. She knew that if she gave in, she would lose everything. And so, the war raged on. The battle had reached its tipping point. Earth's last line of defense was crumbling, and the Zareth were on the verge of claiming victory. But Aurora was not ready to surrender. She had discovered a hidden power within the crystal, a force so immense that it could turn the tide of the war, but at a cost. She stood alone, the final battle about to begin, knowing that this would be her last chance to save her world. With one final cry, she unleashed everything. The moment Aurora released the full force of the crystal's power, the world around her seemed to fracture. A brilliant flash of light engulfed her, radiating outward, warping the air itself. The ground trembled beneath her feet, and for a brief instant, time itself seemed to stand still. The sheer intensity of the energy she had unleashed shattered the skies above, sending ripples through space-time. A wave of pure energy surged from her, a force so concentrated that even the mighty Zereth fleet paused in fear. The war had come to a head. The Zereth fleet, hovering above Earth's surface, was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Towering ships with sleek designs, their energy weapons capable of turning cities into ashes, they had been on the verge of annihilating the planet. But Aurora's power shifted the balance. The barrier she had created was like nothing they had encountered. As the first blast of energy struck the closest ship, it exploded in a cataclysmic fireball. The Zereth forces hesitated, watching in disbelief as their most advanced warships were torn apart by the force of Aurora's will. But Aurora herself had not come through this unscathed. The power of the crystal, though vast, was not something any human could fully contain. With every pulse, the connection between her and the crystal deepened, and the power surged through her, threatening to overtake her very consciousness. The energy that had once felt like a gift now seemed like a dangerous weight she could barely hold onto. Her mind buzzed, filled with alien thoughts and foreign ideas, as if the crystal itself was trying to communicate with her. Embrace it. Take control. The voice came not from her mouth, but directly in her mind. The alien whispers of the crystal became louder, more insistent. You are the nexus, the focal point of the universe. You must ascend. The future of all things rests in your hands. Aurora clenched her fists, her teeth gritted. No. She would not become a tool of the crystal. Not after everything she had fought for. Not after everything she had lost. Despite the overwhelming pressure threatening to crush her, Aurora focused, her mind narrowing on a single thought: I will protect them. I will protect Earth. She could feel the pulse of the crystal, pulsing stronger than ever, and with it, the entire fabric of reality seemed to bend in response. The shock wave of her energy spread outward, distorting space around her, causing the Zereth ships to flicker and warp. On the battlefield, her power was already taking a toll on the enemy forces. Ships were unraveling at the edges of their hulls, their systems short-circuiting as they were bombarded by a force they could neither comprehend nor defend against. The Zereth were powerful, yes, but they had never faced anything like this. Aurora's will collided with the ancient alien forces, and as the warships disintegrated one by one, she realized that she had done more than just repel an invasion. She had altered the battlefield itself. In the blink of an eye, entire sections of space warped, flickering between dimensions. Earth's atmosphere was crackling with energy, and the war had stopped, if only for a moment, in stunned silence. But it was clear that this would not be a battle of simple force. The Zereth fleet's leaders, as ancient and calculating as they were, quickly realized that defeating Aurora was no longer just a matter of firepower. The destruction of their ships and the devastation to their forces were only the beginning. They had underestimated the sheer scale of the power Aurora now wielded, and this mistake had cost them dearly. The leader of the Zereth, a towering figure cloaked in golden armor, stared at the images of the battle unfolding. His soldiers, once proud and unrelenting, were now scattered and broken. But he was not one to surrender so easily. His eyes gleamed with cold resolve. You see, General, he said to his second in command, a much smaller, yet still imposing figure, the human girl has unlocked something ancient. Something far beyond her comprehension. She is no longer just a weapon. She is a force of nature, a living catalyst. But every force of nature must burn itself out. The general looked uncertain, but the leader waved him off. We will adapt. We have something she doesn't. The leader turned to a nearby communications officer. Prepare the gate. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, Aurora was struggling to maintain her hold on the crystal's power. The very essence of her being was tied to it now. But what had begun as a gift had quickly become a curse. The more she used its power, the more she felt herself being consumed, lost in the ever-growing tide of energy that now flowed through her. She could feel the pull of the crystal, whispering to her, urging her to unlock even greater depths of its potential. But every time she gave in, it took a piece of her humanity. She was fighting to keep herself grounded, to remember who she was in the face of this vast, overwhelming power. She sank to her knees, her breath ragged. Her mind felt like it was shattering, the crystal's energy threatening to consume her entirely. No, she whispered to herself. I will not lose myself to this. But as her hands pressed to the earth beneath her, she realized something, a fleeting realization that pierced through the fog of her thoughts. The crystal was not just a weapon, it was a remnant of something ancient, something even older than the Zereth themselves. It was the key to something far greater. And she had to control it, or it would control her. Her vision cleared, and with renewed focus, she raised her hands toward the sky. The crystal responded in kind, glowing brightly as it linked with the vast energy of the universe itself. Aurora felt a surge of power, stronger than anything she had ever experienced. It was not just the power to destroy, it was the power to reshape, to remake. And she would use it to end the war. High above Earth, the Zereth fleet was preparing for their final assault. They had detected the fluctuations in spacetime, the bending of reality that accompanied Aurora's power. They knew she was holding something back, something even more dangerous than what they had already witnessed. The leader of the Zereth, standing on the command deck of his flagship, felt it, a tremor in the fabric of reality, an unnatural distortion. She's reaching the nexus, he murmured to himself, a gleam of something like admiration in his voice. She's attempting the final ascension. Shall we prepare to eliminate her, my lord? The general asked, his voice filled with anticipation. The leader thought for a moment, a strange sense of respect for the girl filling his mind. No. We'll offer her one last chance. We cannot afford to let this power slip away. If she joins us, the galaxy could be ours. Meanwhile, Aurora stood in the ruins of what was once her peaceful home. The city around her had been reduced to rubble, but she was determined to stop the destruction. The ground before her pulsed with the raw energy of the Nexus, and with a deep breath, she called upon every ounce of willpower within her. With a single motion, she ripped a rift in spacetime, a tear that linked directly to the heart of the Zereth fleet. The universe itself seemed to shudder as the tear widened, and the Zereth ships fell within range. Aurora's voice, amplified by the power of the Nexus, echoed across the stars. I am not your weapon, she said, her voice cutting through the void. And I will not be your tool. A storm of energy erupted, a singularity of light and power. The stars seemed to flicker and dance as the tear grew into a vortex, pulling the Zereth ships into its embrace. But just as quickly, the leader of the Zereth realized what Aurora had done. No! He shouted, his plans unraveling in an instant. The very heart of his fleet had been consumed by the rift. But Aurora was not done. Aurora stood at the center of the rift, her hands outstretched as the swirling energy cascaded around her. Her heart raced, her mind teetering on the edge of control. The Nexus was within her, unprecedented, limitless. It pulsed, shimmering like a star in her chest, an impossible force that linked the fabric of space and time itself. She could feel it, the power to create and destroy, to reshape the very world around her. But it was too much. Too overwhelming. Her vision flickered as fragments of alien thoughts flooded her mind, and she gasped for air. It was as if the crystal's ancient origins were speaking to her in a language beyond human comprehension, faint whispers of civilizations lost to time, of galaxies and species that had once wielded the power she now held. The tear in spacetime was wide, the rift too massive to control with her will alone. It was pulling everything Earth, the Zereth fleet, the very fabric of the universe, into a singularity. The stars above seemed to warp, bending in a spiral of infinite possibilities. Aurora could feel the pull, the tug of the universe's inevitable collapse. You must release it, child, a voice echoed in her mind. It was not the crystal this time. The voice was deeper, older, wise beyond measure. The power you hold is too vast for one such as you to control. Let go, and the universe will find its balance. Aurora's heart thundered in her chest. I can't let go. Not now. Not when it's all at stake. She closed her eyes, reaching deeper into the energy that coursed through her veins. Her hands trembled, the power surging with greater intensity than ever before. The Nexus had a will of its own, pushing against her, forcing her to break free. But she resisted. She could hold it. She could save them all. But in the distance, the shadow of the Zereth leader grew clearer. His ship had somehow avoided the full wrath of the rift, though it had been severely damaged. He had sensed Aurora's struggle, her moment of weakness. He was determined to seize this moment, this pivotal moment of vulnerability, and claim the power of the Nexus for himself. His voice rang through the broken frequencies, amplified by the damaged systems of his flagship. Human girl, you do not understand. You cannot control what you do not comprehend. You will not escape this. We are the Zereth. You are nothing. Your species is nothing. The words echoed in Aurora's mind, trying to force her to doubt herself. Her eyes flickered open, and for a split second, she could see the fleet in the distance, burning at the edges of the rift, their broken ships drifting aimlessly. She could see the Zereth leader himself, encased in golden armor, standing at the helm of his ship, radiating an aura of arrogance and contempt. It was then that she understood. It was not just the Zereth who feared her power, it was the universe itself. The Nexus was a force beyond the comprehension of any living being, and every entity in the galaxy, from the tiniest insect to the mightiest empire, had felt its tremor. It had awakened something within them all, a primal fear of the unknown. The Nexus was a force that could rewrite the laws of existence itself. And Aurora was the key to its control. But the question was, should she control it? The rift in spacetime was widening, and with it, the destruction. The entire galaxy seemed on the brink of implosion. The only way to stop it was to sever her connection to the Nexus and to let it go. But that meant surrendering the power she had fought so hard to claim, the power that had brought her this far. Aurora clenched her jaw. She couldn't afford to let the rift continue to grow. The energy, though alluring, was starting to fray at the edges of her consciousness. She could feel herself slipping, the hunger for more power gnawing at her, the temptation to embrace the force fully whispering in the back of her mind. But she knew she could not give in. Not now. With a final, desperate cry, Aurora closed her eyes and focused all her energy on severing the rift. She called upon the remnants of her humanity, clinging to the person she had been before all of this began, the girl who had wanted to explore the stars, the girl who had dreamed of a peaceful world. The crystal pulsed one final time, and Aurora felt the pull of the Nexus. She felt herself stretching across the dimensions, caught between two realities. But with one last exhale, she let go. The rift collapsed, snapping shut in a burst of pure light. The entire field of spacetime shifted, and a shockwave reverberated through the galaxy. And then, all was still. Aurora awoke on the ground, the world around her quiet. Her limbs felt heavy, her mind foggy. She struggled to sit up, blinking against the remnants of the brilliant light that had filled the sky moments before. The stars above her were still, their brightness almost too much to bear. She reached for the crystal, but it was gone. Aurora's heart pounded in her chest as she glanced around. The rift had closed, no longer was the fabric of spacetime unraveling. The Zereth fleet, once so imposing, was now scattered in pieces across the battlefield. The great ships had been torn apart, their once mighty structures now drifting helplessly in space. Their power had been broken. But it was not just the Zereth who were affected. All across the earth, humanity was waking from the chaos. The governments that had once been on the brink of collapse were now beginning to stabilize, their systems restored in the aftermath of the rift. Aurora's power, the force that had threatened to tear the world apart, had also been the very force that had saved it. But there were no celebrations. No cheers. There was only the weight of silence. The power had faded. Aurora could feel it slipping away, leaving only a lingering sense of loss. The Nexus was gone, and with it, the connection she had forged with the crystal. She was human again. Just a girl. But she was also something more. A figure approached her, stepping through the remnants of the battlefield, his presence imposing. It was the leader of the Zereth. His golden armor was scorched and broken, his once confident stance now more cautious. But there was a glimmer of respect in his eyes. "You are not like the others," he said, his voice low. "The humans. They are weak. But you are something different." Aurora stood tall, though her body trembled from the aftereffects of the battle. "I don't want your respect," she said, her voice steady. "I want you to leave. And never come back." The Zereth leader's gaze hardened, but there was no fire in it now. He turned, his ship slowly retreating into the distance. The war was over. In the days that followed, the world slowly began to rebuild. News of the battle spread, but so did whispers of a new hope, a humanity that had stood against the darkness, not with superior strength, but with resolve. A human girl, once thought insignificant, had altered the very course of history. Aurora remained on Earth, among the remnants of her home, still trying to grasp the full magnitude of what she had done. Her life, her future, had changed beyond recognition. But she had saved the planet. She had saved her people. She looked up at the sky, the stars twinkling once again in their vast expanse. The universe, it seemed, was still a mystery, one she had yet to fully understand. But she had learned one thing. The greatest power of all was not the ability to control the universe. It was the ability to protect it. Aurora Quinn, the girl who had once been ordinary, had become the guardian of humanity's future. And though the universe had changed, it was not the end. It was only the beginning. Months passed since the battle that reshaped Earth's future. Aurora Quinn, once just a girl from a small town, had become a symbol. Her actions during the final moments of the rift had saved humanity, and though the world was still recovering from the trauma of an alien invasion, a sense of unity had emerged that had never been seen before. Nations had come together, rebuilding what had been lost and learning from the chaos. Earth, though scarred, had risen from the ashes. Yet, for Aurora, things had never been the same. Though the crystal, the Nexus, had disappeared, the memory of its power still lingered within her. The strength, the vast knowledge it had gifted her, it was gone, but its mark remained, etched into her very being. She still felt its presence, faint but undeniable, like a whisper at the back of her mind, urging her to seek something more. And so, she began to ask questions. What was the Nexus? Where had it come from? What had it meant for the fate of the universe? The Zereth, too, had disappeared. Their fleet was shattered, their leader retreating into the distant reaches of space. But something about their departure didn't sit right with Aurora. They hadn't just been invaders, they had been aware of the Nexus long before she had even known of it. And their parting words still echoed in her mind, "You are something different." The knowledge that the Zereth had known about the Nexus raised more questions. The crystal wasn't just some cosmic fluke, it was part of something much larger, something that stretched across galaxies and time. And that meant that Earth, and perhaps all of humanity, was entangled in something far beyond their understanding. Aurora couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't over. One day, a sudden transmission came through Earth's newly established global communications network. The message was clear, but its source was unknown. Humanity has risen. But the path you walk now is fraught with peril. Beware the shadow that comes, for the Nexus is not the only key. There are others, scattered across the stars. And some are far more dangerous than you realize. If you seek knowledge, you must find the one who knows. But be warned, to know the truth is to risk everything. The transmission was brief, and then it cut off. It was not from the Zereth, nor was it any known human transmission. The origin point was too far beyond Earth's borders, lost somewhere in the void of space. Aurora stared at the message, the hair on the back of her neck standing up. She had felt the weight of the crystal's disappearance, but this felt like something entirely different. The warning, the cryptic nature of it, sent a chill down her spine. She had barely come to terms with the events that had unfolded, and now, this? She knew she had no choice but to follow the trail. Her power had never fully vanished, though it had faded. Her connection to the Nexus was not gone, just dormant. The words others and key haunted her thoughts. Aurora couldn't ignore it. She needed to find out who had sent the message and what they meant by the truth. With determination setting in, she reached out to the global government. The council was still in its early stages of formation, but they had taken note of Aurora's abilities and had started to view her as something of a national asset. She knew they would be reluctant to let her go alone, but she couldn't risk anyone getting in her way. They would never understand what she was seeking, what the stakes were. "I need a ship," she told the council, her voice steady, her resolve firm. "A fast one. I'm leaving Earth to follow a lead. I can't explain it all right now, but I need to go." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. One, a former general who had seen the Zereth threat firsthand, was the first to speak. "Aurora, you've done enough. The war's over. There's nothing else to chase out there. You need to stay. The world needs you here." "I can't stay," she replied. "Not when I know there's more at stake. There's something out there, and I need to find it." The general sighed, but then nodded reluctantly. "Very well. We'll give you the ship, but this is the last time. We're not sending anyone else with you, Quinn. You'll go alone." Aurora didn't argue. She'd come to terms with the fact that she would have to walk this path alone. Aurora's journey took her far beyond the familiar, into the vast stretches of space where stars burned like pinpricks in the black canvas of the universe. Her ship, a sleek and advanced vessel, allowed her to travel faster than anything Earth had yet created, though the distance between her and the unknown was still immense. As she left the comfort of her home planet behind, the enormity of the galaxy spread out before her. The star maps she had studied over the years showed an endless sea of galaxies, star systems, and planets, each with its own secrets, its own mysteries. Aurora, now in the heart of the void, felt both small and vast at once. Her connection to the Nexus had never truly left her, and with each passing day, she felt its subtle pulse beneath her skin like an invisible thread that tied her to the universe. The power was no longer overwhelming, but it had become a part of her, as much a part of her as her own breath. Days turned into weeks as Aurora followed the trail left by the cryptic transmission. She visited abandoned space stations, desolate moons, and planets that seemed to be nothing more than cosmic ruins. Each place offered clues, fragments of ancient civilizations that once thrived and then vanished. She pieced them together like a puzzle, finding artifacts and symbols that hinted at a greater truth. It was on a forgotten planet, buried deep in an uncharted system, that Aurora discovered what she had been searching for. The planet was barren, its surface cracked and lifeless. But buried beneath the dust and rubble, she found an ancient structure, an obelisk of sorts, towering above the surface, inscribed with strange symbols that seemed to shimmer as she approached. It was the same energy she had felt when the Nexus had first chosen her, and it sent a jolt through her body. She knew, without a doubt, that this was the source of the transmission. As she approached, the ground beneath her feet began to hum, and the symbols on the obelisk glowed brighter, reacting to her presence. A voice echoed in the air, soft, ethereal, and yet unmistakably familiar. "Aurora Quinn," it said, the words floating through her mind as though spoken directly to her. "You have found the first of the keys. The Nexus is but one part of a greater whole. There are others who seek them, and they will stop at nothing to control what you now know. The path you have chosen will bring you face to face with those who would see the galaxy remade in their image. You must choose your next steps carefully. The fate of all things rests with you." Aurora stepped back, her heart pounding in her chest. The voice, it was not the crystal, but something ancient, something even more powerful. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What are the keys?" The voice paused for a moment before responding. "I am the keeper. I am the guardian of knowledge, the one who watches over the keys to the universe's ultimate power. And you, Aurora, are its chosen. But the journey does not end here. You will not walk alone, but you must decide who you trust. The others are already coming. Be prepared, for the darkness is near. Aurora stared at the obelisk, her mind reeling with the enormity of the information she had just received. The voice had warned her of the others, those who would seek the keys to control the universe, and of the coming darkness. She wasn't sure who these others were or what they wanted, but the weight of the warning was clear. She felt the cold grip of fear, but also a strange sense of purpose. This was bigger than the Zareth, bigger than the battles Earth had fought to survive. She was no longer just a girl who had found a crystal, no longer just a survivor. She was something more. She was a part of something that stretched beyond time, beyond space, a key holder to a force that could reshape everything. She turned and left the obelisk behind, but the voice still lingered in her mind. The galaxy is watching, Aurora Quinn. Your next choice will shape its future. Her path had just become even more dangerous. And now, Aurora Quinn was no longer just the protector of Earth. She was the protector of the universe itself. Aurora stood on a forgotten planet, the Keeper's warning echoing in her mind. What began as survival after an alien invasion had grown into a cosmic battle for the galaxy's fate. The cryptic message spoke of the keys scattered across the universe, linked to the mysterious Nexus force that had chosen her. But what were the keys? And who else was hunting them? As she traveled, uncovering clues, she learned that the enemies after the keys were ancient entities, seeking the Nexus to dominate all life. But she wasn't alone. She gathered a resistance of fighters who wanted to prevent their future from being stolen. Together, they formed a small but determined coalition, standing against the coming storm. The final key was located in a distant nebula, and Aurora's team had to find it. As they approached, they encountered an immense fleet, larger than anything the Zareth had assembled, led by an ancient being forged from cosmic energy. The time for questions was over. The galaxy's fate was on the line. Aurora knew the final confrontation was inevitable. She would face this dark force alone. In the nebula's heart, the Nexus spoke to Aurora once more. You are ready now. The power you seek is within you. But remember, you must choose: be the galaxy's guardian or its destroyer. Aurora steeled herself. She had learned that true power came from sacrifice, not domination. She approached the final key, prepared to confront the ancient being who had hunted it for eons. The being taunted her, but Aurora stood firm, channeling the Nexus energy not for control, but for protection. In a single motion, she unleashed a wave of light that consumed the dark entity and collapsed the fleet in a blinding flash. The galaxy was saved. The galaxy began to rebuild, forever altered. Aurora had saved it, but she knew peace was fragile. The Nexus was no longer a weapon, but a force of life, and she its guardian. The galaxy, now in balance, had a chance to heal. Aurora Quinn, protector of the galaxy, had broken the chains of oppression. As she gazed at the stars, she saw a future filled with hope. Her journey was over, but the story of the universe was just beginning.